Welcome to Early Indicators. This is episode 2 in our January domain on geopolitical realignments. Today's theme is the fragmentation of global governance, competing standards, systems, and spheres. This episode focuses on signals, structural, not events, early, not reactive, underreported, not mainstream, directional, not episodic. These signals reveal how global governance is quietly splintering into parallel systems that will shape the next decade. Historical context. How we reached this moment. For nearly 70 years, global governance operated through a relatively unified architecture: Bretton Woods institutions, Western-led trade rules, shared technical standards, and a broadly aligned digital ecosystem. From the 1970s onward, this system expanded through globalization, WTO integration, and the spread of U.S.-centric financial and technological norms. But beneath the surface, structural forces were shifting. The rise of new economic centers, demographic divergence, digital sovereignty movements, and the diffusion of advanced technologies created pressure points. The 2008 financial crisis weakened confidence in Western institutions. The 2010s saw the emergence of alternative development banks, regional data laws, and competing infrastructure models. The current moment represents an inflection. Instead of one global governance system, multiple overlapping spheres are emerging. This fragmentation is not a headline-driven event, it is a structural realignment. It reshapes systems of trade, technology, finance, and security. It alters long-term trajectories by weakening universal rules and strengthening regional blocs. It reveals fragility in global coordination but also resilience in localized governance models. This theme fits the domain because geopolitical realignments are increasingly expressed through standards, not treaties. Through systems, not summits, through regulatory divergence, not dramatic diplomatic breaks. Current signals: what's emerging right now? Several early, underreported, directional signals show that global governance is splintering into competing frameworks. AI standards are diverging across three major blocks: US innovation-driven models, EU rights-based regulatory frameworks, and China's state-aligned governance architecture. This divergence is structural and will shape global tech ecosystems. Data governance is fragmenting as more than 70 countries adopt data localization laws, creating incompatible digital spheres that affect firms, cities, and cross-border commerce. Trade rules are shifting as regional agreements, RCEP, CPTPP, AFCFTA, gain influence while WTO dispute mechanisms weaken. This reveals a long-term trajectory toward regionalized economic governance. Digital payment systems are splitting as central bank digital currency pilots expand across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, creating alternative financial rails outside traditional dollar-centric systems. Cybersecurity norms are diverging as states adopt incompatible frameworks for attribution, offensive capabilities, and critical infrastructure protection. Satellite governance is fragmenting as new constellations and launch providers create competing orbital traffic standards. These signals matter because they reshape global systems at both macro and micro layers. At the macro layer, geopolitical blocs are forming around standards. At the micro layer, cities, firms, and communities must navigate incompatible rules. Signal strength: accelerating. Case studies, where the shift is most visible. EU AI Act versus US voluntary frameworks. Europe is building a strict regulatory model while the US prioritizes innovation and sector-specific guidance. This divergence creates two incompatible governance spheres for firms operating globally. China's digital Silk Road, Beijing's export of telecom infrastructure, cloud services, and digital governance models creates a parallel ecosystem across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. African Continental Free Trade Area, ACFTA Africa is building its own trade governance architecture, reducing reliance on external systems and strengthening regional economic sovereignty. India's data localization regime. New rules reshape how global firms store, process, and transfer data, signaling a shift toward national digital sovereignty. Implications: why this matters. For nations, fragmentation reduces the influence of universal institutions and increases the strategic weight of regional blocs. For cities, it complicates digital infrastructure planning and cross-border partnerships. For firms, it raises compliance costs and forces multi-standard operations. For communities, it affects access to technology, financial systems, and digital services. At the macro layer, global governance becomes more contested and less coordinated. At the micro layer, local ecosystems must adapt to overlapping regulatory spheres. This shift reveals fragility in global cooperation but resilience in regional innovation. It also alters long-term trajectories by embedding geopolitical competition into the technical foundations of daily life. Future expectations/projections, where this is heading. Short term, 1 to 3 years expect more regional AI, data, and cybersecurity frameworks. Countries will adopt sovereign tech stacks to reduce dependency on external systems. Medium term, 3 to 10 years competing financial rails, digital identity systems, and satellite governance models will solidify into distinct blocks. Firms will operate across multiple incompatible standards. Long term, 10+ years. Global governance will resemble a patchwork of overlapping spheres rather than a unified system. Influence will flow through standards, not treaties. Early indicators to watch: new regional regulatory alliances, cross-border data restrictions, digital currency interoperability pilots, and satellite traffic coordination disputes. What to watch next: track how emerging economies choose between governance spheres, or build their own. Their decisions will shape the next decade of global alignment. Episode Summary. This episode explored how global governance is fragmenting into competing standards and systems. These signals are structural, early, underreported, and directional, reshaping macro systems and micro realities across technology, trade, finance, and security. Thank you for listening to Early Indicators. Please like, subscribe, and share the podcast. This episode draws on publicly available information, including international think tank reports, academic research, public economic and policy data, open-source intelligence, and non-copyrighted summaries. This episode is for informational and educational purposes only. It does not constitute political advice, financial guidance, or predictive certainty.